I call this the Possum syndrome, and the reason I'm talking about this is because this morning I went to the grocery store and I experienced the Possum syndrome. I experience this all the time, but because I went through that, I just thought, when I do the video today, I think I'm going to talk about this because it's important. Now, it's something that is very akin to selective mutism. So we're going to delve into that in just a moment. But I call it quasi-selective mutism, but professionals may say, no, it's actually is a part of selective mutism. But the problem that I encounter is when you go to research these things on the internet, nearly always, the information that you find applies to children, which is a good thing, obviously. But if you're an adult and you're still experiencing this and you still have difficulty with this, you need help. Well, here I am. Okay, what is the Possum syndrome? I don't know if you know this or not, but possums don't play possum. Now you may say, well, I saw a possum playing possum. He wouldn't move. He was pretending to be dead or pretending to be asleep. And no, he was not pretending. Or she, if it was a girl possum. They're not pretending. They can't help it. There is a neurological response to stress, to anxiety, that causes them to just freeze up. Their brain says, you're not going to move. You're not going to function normally, as you would if the stress were not there. And so it's a kind of a brain freeze. I like to call it mind freeze. Because when you say brain freeze, people think of ice cream. You eat ice cream, it gives you a headache, and people call that brain freeze. Well, this is really brain freeze. But I don't want you to think of ice cream. I want you to think of your mind freezing. Or sometimes it just kind of gums up. So the first thing we notice about this is I would say that it is a it is a form of selective mutism, so I would call it a quasi-selective mutism. Now, professionals may say, no, it actually is a form of selective mutism, and maybe it is. I'll leave that up to the experts. So, again, those of us with autism, often, not all of us, find ourselves in a similar situation as the possum. Our mind freezes, stressful situation. And it looks like we're just kind of playing dead. Only we're more like a zombie than a possum. We're there, but the stressful situation has triggered something neurologically, and we can't talk. We just can't function. We were perfectly okay a few moments ago. I don't know if you've ever seen a possum, out in the woods, whatever. They're perfectly fine. By the way, they say they make really good pets. The only problem is they don't live very long. Another thing we know about possums that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I thought it was interesting, is those who believe in evolution say the possum is a stunning success story. These things have been around for countless thousands and thousands and millions of years. They are survivors. That's a good thing. If you don't believe in evolution, that's fine. Still, they're survivors. Well, if we have the possum syndrome, that means nature may have us cued for survival. Positive thing, we can throw that in there, but really doesn't have a whole lot to do with anything other than to understand that they're not playing. Now, the reason this came to mind, we're going to talk about this in a little more detail in just a moment. I went to the grocery store this morning, which is my weekly thing to do. And you encounter people, you talk to people, and you know how it is. If you have autism, is every time you approach a person or a person approaches you, nearly every time, you have this mind freeze, the possum syndrome. You were perfectly okay a second ago, then somebody talks to you. Or somebody approaches you and you have to talk to them. You just kind of lock up. Words don't come freely. When they do come, it's awkward and you sound kind of funny. You sound kind of weird, and they pick up on that. And they assume you're an oddball and they respond accordingly. Sometimes it's just, they try to get away from you because they think you're nuts, or maybe They take advantage of you because they think you're dumb or stupid. But just a second ago, we were perfectly okay. Now, I was, checking out my groceries, and I needed to talk to the cashier. I don't think they call them cashiers because it's self-checkout. They don't do anything except for help people who need help, and I needed help, but they weren't actually, running a cash register, so you can't call them a cashier, but I don't know what else to call them but a clerk. But I needed to talk to her. And just that thought was so stressful that I kind of locked up, Possum syndrome. And I couldn't speak freely. I could speak, I could force it out, but it was tight. It was not totally frozen, but it was really, really cold, Go outside and your hands aren't frozen, but they're so cold you can't hardly move them. You ever tried to play guitar when it's, 20 degrees outside? Ever tried to play a piano when it's 20 degrees outside? I can't play either one of them, even if it's warm, but, But you're not frozen, stiff, but you can't hardly move. And that's what's going on inside our mind. That's what's going on with our vocal cords. We can't just open up. And again, as I said a moment ago, people think you're weird. And that just makes it worse because you're aware of the fact you see their feedback, and how they're treating you. So there I was trying to talk to the cashier, managed to communicate what I wanted to communicate, and got the job done. Fortunately, a very nice person. On the other hand, the other day I was walking through the neighborhood. I take a walk every day or almost every day. And one of the neighbors stopped me. Small talk. Oh, that's a problem. But this time, no, it was perfectly okay. No brain freeze, no possum syndrome, nothing. We just had a really nice conversation. That happens so infrequently, I should say. It is so unusual that when you can have a regular conversation with just a normal person, it's actually kind of nice. It's cool. It's nice to have your confidence, And I think that is part of selective mutism or the Possum syndrome, is you just don't have the freedom of mind. It's very unpleasant. But so first of all, we say we need to understand this is either selective mutism or I say it's quasi-selective mutism. I don't really know. But number two is you literally cannot communicate. When I was a kid, I couldn't talk in stressful situations. And nearly every situation was a stressful situation, just about all the time. Now, fortunately, I did have a few friends. Not many, maybe two. And I could relate to them. And the way that I expressed that is they could come into my bubble, where they could come into my shell where I lived. I couldn't go outside to them. They had to come into me. I could never get outside my bubble. And there were a few people in my life like that, but not very many. And it's tough because, when you study this on the internet and you go to websites that specialize in this, and by the way, there is a website that is dedicated, an organization that is dedicated to selective mutism. You might want to check that out. If I have the presence of mind, I'll put a link in the description. But I'm in a bubble. And I can recall so many times, particularly, I remember when I was in college, I thought, I'm in a bubble all the time. I can't communicate to anybody. It's frustrating. People think I'm weird. They think I'm strange. But those exceptions, I recall when I was, 18 years old, teenager, I had a girlfriend. I know, you're shocked, but I actually had a girlfriend. And I was so proud of her. She was very attractive. She was very centered. She was just about as normal as you could be. Didn't have a temper tantrum. Didn't go into deep states of depression. She just very centered. Not too many people like that. I was just kind of amazed that she saw anything in me. But that is one example of one of the few people in my life who could come inside my bubble, come inside my shell. And it's like she just didn't see what everyone else saw. But other people do see it because you keep locking up. And if someone else doesn't see it, the person who does see it will kind of nudge, wink, and say, hey, this guy's goofy. You know, they may not say it literally, and sometimes they do. So that's the third thing. The problem is we present as just kind of being weird. I mentioned this a moment ago, but people will, they realize you have problems. They see you as an oddball, and they take advantage of you, or they disregard you. And that's one of the reasons people with autism have such a difficult time holding down a job. You know, I mean, life would be good if you didn't have to go to school, didn't have to go to work, didn't have to go to church, live out in the woods somewhere all by yourself. Life would be fine. Live with the possums, and we would scare each other. I don't know what happens if an autistic person encounters a possum. The possum would be scared and freeze, and the autistic person would be scared and freeze. How long does that last? All right, that's not the same thing, because it's not a social situation. Let's see if I can pull this up on the screen here. This is from the National Health, whatever, United Kingdom. And it gives us a description of selective mutism, and I thought we ought to kind of walk through and talk through this for just a moment so we understand what the Possum syndrome is all about. So we have the definition. It is an anxiety disorder when a person is unable to speak. Literally, physically, your vocal cords tighten up. You, or I don't know about you, but saying you in general cannot talk. Nothing comes out. And if it does, again, as we said a couple times before, sounds weird, you know? And people notice that's weird. Certain social situations, such as with classmates at school or relatives they do not see often. Now, the challenge that I had with selective mutism is it was just about with everybody. I had trouble, a lot of difficulty communicating even with my immediate family. And I still do. I just kind of walk up, tighten up. And it was tough. I mean, again, I had maybe 2 or 3 friends that I could open up to and they could come in my bubble, but that was it. Usually starts with childhood. If left untreated, it can persist into adulthood. I'm 70 years old. I'm telling you, it persists into adulthood. I experienced it this morning. There's not a day go by when I encounter another person, with very few exceptions, that I don't have Possum syndrome. I don't have mind freeze. Now they make this point, which I thought was really kind of important. It says, a child or adult, thank you for noticing, adults with selective mutism do not refuse or choose not to speak at certain times. They literally unable to speak. Possum. Catatonic. No, I don't think we go catatonic, but maybe we do. I mean, it's something halfway there, midway there. The expectation to talk to certain people triggers a freeze response with feelings of anxiety and panic, and talking is impossible. Now, these people, whoever wrote this, I don't know who it was, they just flat out nailed it. Because talking is literally impossible. Now, I've said this in other videos, and I like to repeat it often because it's important, but a lot of people, they just don't understand this. I mean, because they just can't relate to it. For people to understand, they've got to have some point of reference. They have to be able to relate, and so to accomplish that, I notice that most people have the same response when they're asked to speak before a crowd. Public speaking, most people are terrified of it. Same thing. The only difference is it's all the time for people who are autistic. Now, some little quirk of my brain, I love public speaking. Something I actually excelled in when I was in school. Speech class, I don't know why. I'm not sure that other people with autism have that. Oddity, we're okay in front of a crowd, but one-on-one, nah. Small crowd, oh, this is terrible. But that being what it may, the story goes on, the article goes on, and it says the expectation to talk to certain people triggers a freeze response. I wanted to emphasize that because they use the word freeze, brain freeze, mind freeze. In time, the person may learn to anticipate the situations that provoke this distressing reaction and do all they can to avoid them. Yeah, I do all I can do to avoid them. That's why I go to the grocery at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd go earlier, except they don't open until 6 in the morning. And I've got to know the people who work there. 6 in the morning, they all say hi because they expect. I've been doing that for years. They just know I'm coming. However, people with selective mutism, or what I would call Possum syndrome, are able to speak freely to certain people, such as close family and friends, inside your bubble, inside my bubble, when nobody else is around to trigger the freeze response. And that, I think, is so terribly important because it is people that trigger the response. Talking about a possum, meeting a possum in the wood, I'll talk to a possum if they want. I'll talk to a dog if he wants to come up and have a conversation. No trigger there, but it's people, always people. Selective mutism affects about 1 in 140 young children. When I was in school, our class size was 30. Every class size was 30. Now they're about half that size. So you would say the average class is 14 to make math simple. One student in 10 classes has this mutism, selective mutism, or the Possum syndrome. Not very many. And my concern is that educators, quote educators, some of them are nutcases, but a lot of them are very good educators, are not alert to it. They're not aware of it. And, if you're a teacher and you got today 15 or so kids and they turn over every year, and you teach for 20 years, well, that'd be 300 kids. You can't get to know all of them. I mean, you can get to know some of them very well, but can't possibly get to know everything about every kid. And I'm not sure they should. I think that's the parents' responsibility anyhow, but still, anybody who is a primary caretaker, I really don't like that term, but a primary caretaker even temporarily, such as a teacher, or such as the bus driver who drives you home, the children home. Whoever is in charge of the kids at any given moment. They need to be alert to some of these challenges that kids face, but they face so many challenges. I mean, if you add up all the neurological, psychological, physiological problems that kids have, there's no expert on the planet that can be familiar with all of these things, and consequently, kids with selective mutism or Possum syndrome, they're missed. They're overlooked. But anyhow, it affects about 1 in 40. It's more common in girls, according to these people who have recently migrated from their country of birth. I don't know about that, but possibly. When I grew up, migration was not a big deal in the United States. Today, it is a big deal, but people I went to school with 1 or 2 exceptions, they all look like me. I mean, not exactly, but we were the same. Then this story goes on. We're not going to go through this because it's too lengthy, but if I think of it, I'll give you a link, and you may want to look at this yourself. Signs of selective mutism: nervousness, uneasy, socially awkward, rude, disinterested, or sulky, clingy. Don't think I was ever clingy, maybe, preschooler, but I think all preschoolers are. Shy and withdrawn. Yeah, that was my moniker, shy. Shy as a pie. There was a kid in school that said, yeah, that's Kenny. That's what they called me. Didn't call me Ken. Kenny, he's shy as a pie. Shy. I wasn't shy. I was terrified. There's a difference. But I presented as being shy, so that's what they thought I was. Stiff, tense, and poorly coordinated. Yep, that nails it. Stubborn or aggressive. I was never aggressive, but I guess many autistic children are. Having temper tantrums when they get home from school. No, I never did that, but I know kids who do or who have done that. Get angry when questioned by parents. My response usually, well, I don't think they question me about it. Come to think of it. More confident children with selective mutism can use gestures to communicate, nodding yes or no. I don't think so, not for me, maybe for you, but my gesture was to bow my head and look at the floor. Wait for it to go away, you know? Not anymore, but I just kind of look away. But my response to this is that I'm trying to get out of my shell, out of my bubble. And sometimes I manage, I try to be friendly to people, And if they don't like it, that's their problem. The fourth thing we want to understand is how far and how extensive is the problem. Now, we're not talking about the problem of those with, the expanse rather of those with Possum syndrome, selective mutism. But to whom? And as I mentioned a moment ago, it's almost everybody. I mean, there are very, very, very few people that don't trigger the Possum syndrome, at least in my experience. And there are exceptions. And as I get older, it's not quite as difficult as it used to be, but it's still there. And that brings us to our fifth point, I guess. And that is, you need to know, speaking as a person who has crossed the, 10, for me it's been a lifetime challenge. And I think it will be there till the day I die. And guess what? I'm okay with it. That's who I am. It's part of who I am, and I accept myself. May not like everything that I am, but I accept myself as I am. I would prefer to be phenomenally wealthy. I would prefer to be very handsome and attractive. I would prefer not to have the Possum syndrome. That's who I am. You can accept me or not, and I think that is the attitude the people with autism ought to embrace. And if you want to seek help, by all means, there are organizations and counselors and professionals who can help you kind of get out of your shell. And if that's what you want to do, why would you not do that? Maybe finances would be a restriction, but if you have someone who can help you and you want to help, well, then in that case, yeah, go for it. But so here I am, 7 years old, and still finding it virtually impossible to get outside my bubble, to get outside my shell. And there's not a whole lot of people who want to come inside with me. And even if they do, they don't know how to do it. They don't know, they try to be friendly. They try to say kind things. They try to be complimentary. It's not coming inside your shell, just being a friend. Now, used car salesmen. I mentioned this in the last video. They're really good at getting inside your shell, but they're disingenuous. Most of them, some of them I'm sure are genuine, but most of them are disingenuous. They just want to sell you a car, and if it's getting inside your shell, that's what they're good at. That's why they're salesmen. Is they are able to get beyond everyone's defenses. So they sell cars or insurance or whatever it is they're selling. Little side note here, my efforts at being a salesman when I was younger, I was bad at it. And they say, rule of thumb is if you're autistic and you're trying to find a career, you're trying to make a career choice, salesperson is probably not the thing for you. But hey, if you're younger, why not try it? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Try something else. Did this help you? Well, if it did, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give this video a thumbs up. Share it on social media. You don't know how helpful that is. Other people get to see it. But above all else, don't forget to subscribe. Leave a comment. Let's join the conversation, spark a conversation. Let us know what you think, and we'll see y'all next time.